Hello, on behalf of USI Commercial, welcome to today's webinar, The Reserve Study, Function and Purpose. Our agenda today, we're going to go over introductions and then the presentation itself. My name is Martin Smith. I'm the Director of Training here at USI Commercial and US Inspect. I'll be your moderator today. Our expert is David Rothbart. He's our Director of Reserve Study Operations. David has completed over 5,000 inspections and 130 reserve studies throughout his 15 years in the industry, and he's worked 11 years commercially. He serves as the Director of Reserve Study Operations, as I said previously, and prior to that, David was our field manager for U.S. Inspect's Northern Virginia team. David is a certified home inspector by the Department of Professional Regulation in Virginia, and his other certifications are listed here. Just a few quick notes about USI Commercial. We have 25 years of service, we have national coverage, and one of the keys to our success in reserve studies is that they are performed by employees. We don't sub the work out, so you benefit from having local support and expertise. We have centralized reporting. The reports are standardized and are easy to read and understand. With that, I'll turn it over to David.
Thank you so much, Martin, and welcome everyone. Glad that you're here for this webinar. A reserve study includes two main sections: a physical analysis of reserve component assets and a financial analysis. The reserve study, through its financial mapping, will help the community have an accurate accounting of reserve funds, financially prepare for capital expenses, schedule timely repair and replacement of common components. It will also help to avoid special assessments and loans, and ultimately help to maximize property values. Underfunding the reserves is a bad decision. The association will have an increased risk of special assessments, deferred maintenance of reserve funding components, sometimes even ineligibility for federal loans if they're needed, the possibility of decreased property values, and an increase in the association board's liability. Something to remember is that expenses will always occur. Delay in action will always make it worse. The unit owners get the bill, and ultimately, it's the association board's responsibility. By understanding what are the most important funding needs for the community, the reserve study will help to create a stable financial foundation with sufficient cash, a stable contribution rate that is evenly distributed, and the end result is going to be fiscal responsibility. The reserve study proposal has to set the parameters and fee for the study. The proposal not only outlines what we're going to do both before, during the site visit, and follow-up period, but also how it will have a positive effect and impact on the community. In the proposal, we will outline what major capital reserve components are maintained and funded by the association. This information is outlined in the RFP, the request proposal, that you submit to us via our online RFP generator. This is important so that we can not only price the job properly, but it gives us an understanding of what components are common to the association, as well as what is not maintained as a capital reserve item. The proposal also helps to set the parameters for the financial analysis, which is really the basis of the reserve study. The more we know about the property and the association's financial reserves, the better equipped we're going to be during the site visit and during the final packaging of the study. Producing a professional reserve study requires the full cooperation of the property manager and the association board of directors. Our reserve studies are performed and packaged using CAI national standards. And what this does is it helps to assure the community of a quality financial guide that will map out the capital reserve financials obligations over the course of the study. And let's face it, the members of the board who are in office now most likely are not going to be in office during the full course of the 30-year study. Having an accurate and financially tolerable study will be a guide that can be passed on to help support the financial accounting of the reserve funds for the association boards to come in the future. This will prevent underfunding which could again lead to special assessments and loans to fund capital component and repair or replacement. The level 1 study is going to be performed in compliance with CAI standards, as well as applicable state guidelines if those are necessary. National standards ensure that whether we're performing a study in Virginia or we're performing a study in Texas, you will be assured that our team of experts will deliver a reserve study that is not only a quality report, but one that will be a practical guide for the HOA or condo association for managing their reserves. It will be necessary for us to have certain property description information with emphasis on the community location, what the community consists of in terms of buildings, roads, other amenities, when the property was built. This will help us to price the job competitively based on the time that we feel is necessary on-site and in the office packaging of study. The reserve component is an item that is the responsibility of the association to maintain, has a limited useful life, and for purposes of the reserve study, we're talking about less than 30 years. Predictable remaining useful life typically occurs on a cyclical basis that exceeds 1 year and costs above the minimum threshold amount. And that minimum threshold amount would be determined by the actual association. It's going to vary depending on the association. An operating expense is typically a fixed expense that occurs on an annual basis, as well as general repairs and maintenance. One of the most popular questions revolves around major maintenance items, such as painting, seal coating. You may have heard from accountants or other entities that since painting and seal coating is not a replacement capital item, it cannot be considered a reserve issue. However, it is the opinion of USI Commercial that these items are considered to be major expenses that occur on a cyclical basis. Therefore, it makes sense not to ignore these expenses as they meet the criteria to be considered a reserve component. Once explained in this context, it's usually agreed that these items will be included as a reserve expense and therefore will be in the report. The reserve study will include all common elements for which reserves are to be accumulated, and we carefully help you to determine which components belong in the study. USA Commercial wants to be sure that the components included are true reserve line items that warrant reserve funding. We carefully analyze components and elements to determine whether they're true reserve items or would be better applied to general funding. We analyze factors that determine whether or not components are limited useful life. We predict remaining life values and above average minimum costs based on the association's financial threshold. Some of the common components are roofing, capital painting, asphalt, exterior cladding, large interior renovations. The site visit is conducted on common elements as reported by the client. For our site visit, we identify those common area components that we have determined require capital reserve funding. Based on information provided by the client's vendors, and our assessment of the components, we develop a component list and life and cost estimates. Estimated life expectancies and life cycles are based on conditions that are readily accessible and visible at the time of the site visit. We don't do any destructive things to buildings, landscaping. We don't perform methods of intrusive investigation during the site inspection. In these cases, information may be obtained by contacting contractors or vendors that have actually done work on the property. We have assumed any and all components have been properly built and will reach normal, typical life expectancies. In general, the reserve study is not intended to identify or fund for construction defects. The purpose of the scope of the study is to be used as a tool to assist the association in developing a funding plan for future repair or replacement of major common area components and elements. If available and applicable, we review and conduct the following. We review site plans, building plans, and other collateral documents provided to us. Review component maintenance plans. Review existing reserve fund studies, if they're provided. We review your financials of the community and compile an inventory of all common components and elements that are going to be considered capital reserve items. Conducting an on-site visual survey of common components and elements, we provide an estimate of the remaining useful life of common components and elements. We include photographs of various areas and systems on the property, provide replacement cost estimates, and provide financial scheduling during the course of the study.
Unfortunately, there's a misconception about these reports are good for an extended period of time, and the report projections actually are over the next 30 years. Just like any major line item in a budget, a reserve study should be reviewed each year before the budget is established by the property manager. Invariably, some assumptions have to be made during the compilation of the analysis. Anticipated events may not materialize and are certainly unpredictable. Deterioration rates and replacement costs are going to vary from causes that are sometimes unforeseen. Earned interest rates may vary from year to year. These variations could alter the content of the reserve study, and therefore USI Commercial recommends that the analysis be reviewed, and a financial analysis along with a property inspection should be conducted at least once every 3 to 5 years. The most successful studies are those which are done in a closely interactive relationship with the client and its management professionals. A comprehensive on-site evaluation by our experienced reserve analyst will be conducted, and the resulting data compiled and analyzed and packaged into the reserve study. At that time, a preliminary report will be submitted to the client for review and comment. Based on the client's input, the report will be revised, and it should be noted that we request revisions be submitted generally within 60 days of the date of the preliminary report, and that all changes be performed at the same time to avoid additional charges. Basically what that means is that we'd rather not modify things that need to be revised piecemeal, but have all of them together. We do them at one time. Everything's in our database, and it makes it much easier. Hopefully you're not going to look at the package study and think it's too cumbersome to understand. Our intention is really to make the reserve study an easy to read and understand product. Please take time to review it carefully and make sure the main ingredients, which are going to be the capital reserve components and the financials, are complete and accurate. And if there are any inaccuracies, please inform us immediately so that we can revise the study. Once you feel the report is an accurate tool to work from, use it to help establish your budget for the upcoming fiscal year. The reserve allocation makes up a large portion of the total monthly assessment, and this report should help to determine the correct amount of money to go into the reserve fund. Additionally, the reserve study should act as a guide to obtain proposals in advance of pending projects. This will give you an opportunity to shop around generally for good pricing and the best contractor to take care of work that is going to be scheduled to be done. The reserve study should be readily available for real estate agents, brokerage firms, and lending institutions for potential future homeowners in the community. As the importance of reserve studies becomes more of a household term, people are actually requesting these studies to reveal the strength of the reserve funding prior to purchasing a condominium or townhome or a single-family home or any property that belongs to an association. USI Commercial utilizes the cash flow funding method with a full funding objective. Basically, by combining the two, the weaknesses of both funding methods are eliminated, setting the association up for success by using this reserve study in an effective manner and ensuring that the association has sufficient capital reserves to pay for expenditures as they are forecasted in the study. Whenever possible, the known costs of reserve items have been factored into the report. Known costs are provided to USI Commercial in the form of invoices, qualified contractor proposals and bids, and direct contact with the client. If exact costs are not available, present costs have been estimated by the reserve analyst's observations and experience. USI Commercial's proprietary internal database of costs and industry-recognized cost reference guides like National Cost Estimator and RS Means and Engineering News Record Cost Book. In addition, every reserve item has been given an estimated remaining useful life, an estimated useful life when new, and has been cast into the future to determine funding costs. If applicable, interest rates earned on accumulated reserve fund and taxes on reserve interest are also calculated into the study. Initial reserve funds are consumed as expenses and incur until fully depleted, and they reduce the annual reserve payment to a minimum. If necessary or requested, USI Commercial can provide additional services for evaluation at competitive rates for conditions that may require additional inspections. And these can include, but are not limited to, transition studies, engineering studies, phase 1 environmental studies, just to name a few. USI Commercial is a full service inspection firm capable of providing evaluation to handle most community needs.
If there are any questions, please feel free to type those in now and we can answer them. Okay, we have a question from Tobin, and he says, how long does it take?
The process is as follows. Once the RFP is submitted to us, the request for proposal, we will have the proposal generally out to you within 28 to 48 hours. It gives you a chance to review the proposal. If it is approved by property management and the board, the proposal is signed, sent back to us, and within 2 weeks, we would have that site visit set up. Once the site visit is completed, the initial draft of the study would be in the hands of the property manager probably within 2 weeks. Depending on our workload, revisions are put into a queue and worked on as they come in if necessary. It's a fairly easy process. We try not to burden the property manager with a lot of calls that are unnecessary. So once that proposal is accepted, things move fairly quickly.
All right, thanks. We have a question from Daniel, and Daniel says, our USI study stated the component method was used. Can you describe the advantages of component versus cash flow?
What we found is that the component method creates a little more rigidity for the association and does not give them as much flexibility if things need to be changed in terms of the reserve allocations, and this can be due to unforeseen circumstances. Something breaks or there's an environmental issue that causes damage to a component. If you're using just a straight component-based funding, it's harder to move money around. And that's one of the reasons that we utilize both the cash flow method and the component-based method. It just gives a little more flexibility in terms of how that money can be moved and allocated as necessary. The other thing that it helps to provide in the funding method that we use is we're not overfunding or putting money away that doesn't necessarily have to be put away at a given time.
Okay, a question from Aisha. She asks, how often should a condo association have a reserve study performed?
What we suggest is if the initial study were done now, we would recommend an update in one of two ways. Either a level 2 update, which would be a reserve study update that requires a site visit. That probably could be done within, say, 3 to 5 years. A level 3 study, which is a non-site visit study generally could be done once a year for the first 5 years, and then after that, we would recommend a complete new level 1 study. The only other time you would use a level 3 study, which again doesn't require a site visit, is if there was a change in covenants. As an example, say there was a pool or a tennis court and the community through a quorum decided to remove it from the site and fill it in and turn it into a sports court or a pavilion area. You would certainly want to update the reserve study at that time, because otherwise you're going to be funding something that doesn't exist anymore. The other reason, and fortunately we're not experiencing it as much now as we were back in 2008, 9, 10, is where there's a lot of foreclosures within the association properties. Well, obviously, if that happens, people are not going to be contributing to the reserves and also to the operating budget. So in that case, the allocations are not going to be able to be realized. So those studies, again, should be updated to reflect those changes.
Okay. We have a question from Charity, a very good question. Are there examples of a reserve study that USI has done that we can review and provide our boards so that they can review it?
Every time an RFP is submitted to us, which again is a request for proposal, when we submit the proposal, we submit samples based on the type of the community. So if it's a condo, low-rise condo community, with the proposal, we'll submit an example of what that study will look like based on that low-rise condo facility. Or if it's a mid-rise, or if it's a high-rise condo, we do the same thing. We do the same thing for single-family communities, for townhouse communities. So the information that you receive in addition to the proposal would be a sample report that's applicable to your community that could be shared with the board of directors or anyone else responsible for making the decision on who's going to be performing the reserve study for the association.
No one's asked this yet, but do we charge for giving a proposal?
No, proposals there's no charge for a proposal, and there's no charge for the sample report that comes along with it. We're happy to provide you with these proposals. We're happy to talk to you. If you do submit an RFP and you need to actually speak to someone, generally that person would be me, and I would be glad to go over the issues that you represent for the community. We can discuss them and how things would work. Also, if you submit an RFP and you're not sure of the capital reserve assets, that's something, again, that I can go over with you and help you and guide you through so that you're getting an accurate proposal to present to the board of directors in that community.
Excellent. Our very own Debbie White wanted to remind you that samples of reserve studies are actually located on our website for all types of properties. All right, we have a very interesting question here from Katina. How do you locate reserve study companies? Is there a database? We are in Southwest Virginia, and the only company we know of that serves this area is Miller Dodson. Are these companies rare?
I wouldn't say that reserve companies are rare. There are not a lot of reserve companies that have national presence. USI Commercial is a company that does represent national presence. The answer that I would like to give is that you don't need to look any further. You found us, and we would love to be able to service your communities. But again, reserve study companies, I would imagine there are quote-unquote mom-and-pop type companies, but national companies, there aren't that many.
Okay. Question from Laura. If the board of directors is having trouble understanding the purpose of the study or the reasoning within the study, are you able to attend a board of directors meeting to help them understand?
We will be able to attend a meeting in some of our national areas. In other areas, logistically, it may not be possible. What's always available would be for me to actually attend a board meeting via teleconference. We don't charge for that, and I could actually be there to go over the study with the association board and also field any of their questions that they may have regarding the study. The other thing that would be available would be to help them along with any revisions that they might have or suggestions on possible changes in funding allocation. Again, those are available directly by me through teleconference, and we don't charge for that service.
Okay, and the final question, I believe, I don't think I've missed any. This is from Tyre, and what resources are available for determining the average expected life of a variety of common area components like asphalt shingle roof, paint, concrete parking lots, landscaping, and sidewalks?
Because USI Commercial is a full-service inspection company, we're not only performing reserve studies and transition studies and environmental studies. We also do property condition assessments on large commercial complexes throughout the country. We also have a residential division that does inspections on private single-family homes and townhomes and condos and so forth. What we do is we use national life expectancy estimators broken down by geographic area. So once again, and I think this question came up before, if we have a property that we're doing a reserve study on in Florida, we know what the life expectancy of a particular component is going to be, such as asphalt roofing or asphalt roadways, pool life expectancy in terms of the surface. Those are going to be different than if we did a reserve study in Chicago, or if we did a reserve study in Jersey, or if we did a reserve study in Texas. It's all based on what the component life expectancies are in those areas, and it's based on environmental conditions, how components wear, depending on where the association is. Again, because our field analysts are local to the communities, somebody that's doing the site visit in Texas, and again, as Martin explained earlier, these are employees of the company. They're very familiar with components and environmental impact within their given community area. Just like a field analyst in Florida is going to know the general conditions and how things wear in that type of environment. And we're not cross-referencing these reserve analysts. So what I'm saying is that a reserve analyst that's employed by USI Commercial in Florida is not going to be doing a reserve study in New Jersey or Massachusetts. And this helps with continuity and accuracy within the study.
All right, great. And we are out of time. Thanks, everybody, for your questions. Thanks for attending. If you would like to get a proposal, you can do that online using the website that you see here on this slide. Or you can call us at 888-225-3755, and we'd be happy to help you with all of your questions and all of your needs. As I said, we will post this recording. We'll give you a link in a follow-up email. So again, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
And again, thank you so much from me as well.